The arena was enormous, stretching as far as the eye could see, its walls made of a strange, glowing metal that pulsed with energy. Thousands of spectators filled the stands, their voices blending into a constant roar. They had come to see the Grand Survival Trials, a contest where the strongest and cleverest from across the galaxy would compete. The air was thick with tension and excitement. Competitors of all shapes and sizes prepared themselves, some flexing their muscles, others checking weapons, and a few meditating in silence. Everyone had a rank, a number that showed their strength, skill, and experience. Most of the crowd paid attention only to the top-ranked competitors, whose flashy displays promised excitement and danger. Lyra stood at the far side of the arena, her heart beating fast. She was small compared to most participants and had no flashy armor or powerful weapon. She had trained for years, but her rank was low, 91st out of 100. Many had already written her off, and some of the spectators even laughed quietly when they noticed her. She didn't have the usual confidence of the high-ranked participants, but she had something they didn't: focus, patience, and careful observation. Lyra knew the trials would test more than strength. They would test judgment, courage, and the ability to adapt. The first trial was about to begin. A massive gate at the center of the arena slid open, revealing a rocky landscape filled with strange plants and dangerous creatures. The ground rumbled beneath the competitors' feet. From above, a shadow fell across the terrain, and a low, rumbling growl echoed through the arena. The crowd went silent for a moment. Reiner, the apex of Veldara, appeared. The creature was enormous, towering over the tallest competitors. Its scales shimmered in shifting shades of green and gold, and its eyes glowed like molten amber. Muscles rippled beneath its armored skin, and sharp claws dug into the ground as it moved. Reiner was feared by all, known to be a perfect judge of skill and heart. Those who angered it rarely survived. Most competitors froze, their weapons trembling in their hands, unsure how to face such a creature. Lyra's breath caught, but she did not move back. She watched the apex silently, her eyes following its slow, deliberate movements. While others relied on flashy gestures or loud displays, Lyra stayed calm. She noticed the way the creature's gaze scanned every detail of the arena, its attention moving from rock to plant to competitor with incredible precision. Lyra realized that the key to surviving the trials was not to fight blindly but to understand the environment and the creatures within it. When the signal sounded, competitors rushed forward. Those ranked at the top dashed into the terrain, swinging weapons, jumping over cliffs, and fighting the smaller creatures that roamed the arena. Many were confident, showing off their skills and expecting to dominate. But almost immediately, the overconfidence of some top-ranked participants led to mistakes. One slipped on a mossy rock and fell into a pit. Another tried to fight a venomous lizard and was forced to retreat after a painful bite. Lyra stayed back, moving cautiously, testing the ground before stepping and avoiding unnecessary fights. She observed patterns in the creature's behavior, predicting their movements, and using clever tricks to pass obstacles. The apex watched her quietly. Unlike the others, Lyra never attacked indiscriminately or acted recklessly. When she encountered a small, frightened creature, she stepped aside and let it move away instead of harming it. Reiner's glowing eyes seemed to linger on her longer than on the others, almost as if it recognized something unusual. The spectators began noticing the difference too. Murmurs spread through the stands. "Look at her," some whispered. "She's different." As the trial progressed, Lyra found herself in a narrow canyon filled with jagged rocks. A dangerous creature lurked nearby, its body blending perfectly with the shadows. The other competitors, relying on strength alone, tried to fight it and failed. Lyra, however, crouched low and observed. She noted the creature's pattern, how it moved after sensing vibrations in the ground. With careful steps, she bypassed it, letting it pass harmlessly. Her heart pounded, but she felt a quiet satisfaction. She was alive because she had chosen patience over recklessness, observation over force. Meanwhile, chaos erupted elsewhere. Some top-ranked participants had gotten trapped by falling rocks or were chased by packs of smaller predators. The crowd gasped and cheered, excitement rising with each unexpected twist. Lyra continued steadily, her focus unbroken. She knew that surviving was more important than impressing anyone. Yet, she could feel the apex's presence constantly near her. It moved silently across cliffs and rocks, watching, analyzing. Every so often, Lyra caught the amber glow of its eyes in the shadows, and a shiver ran down her spine. Finally, the first challenge neared its end. Lyra reached a high plateau overlooking the arena. From here she could see almost all competitors struggling, exhausted and injured, while she remained relatively unscathed. Her movements had been careful but effective. She did not need to dominate or fight. She had survived with skill, intelligence, and respect for life. From the cliffs above, Reiner emitted a low, resonant growl. It was not threatening, but it carried a weight that made everyone pause. The crowd fell silent, all eyes turning to the apex. The creature's gaze then rested on Lyra, holding it longer than anyone else, almost as if it were judging not just her skill but her character. The spectators began to whisper again, this time in awe rather than doubt. She ranked 91 ST, someone murmured. And she's still standing. Another added, look at how the apex is watching her, maybe she's different. Lyra stood quietly, feeling both nervous and proud. She knew the trials were far from over, but something inside her shifted. The attention of the apex, a creature no one could predict, was now on her. Somehow she felt a connection, a silent understanding. As the first trial concluded, competitors were called back to the arena floor. Many were injured, exhausted, or demoralized. Lyra walked back steadily, her calm demeanor drawing more attention than any display of power could. The higher-ranked participants eyed her with a mix of confusion and unease. How could a low-ranked girl survive when the strongest were struggling? More importantly, why had the apex seemed to notice her above all others? Lyra did not answer these questions aloud. She simply took a deep breath and prepared for the next challenge. The crowd's cheers and the apex's watchful presence filled her mind, reminding her that sometimes the smallest and quietest could make the greatest impact. She had been overlooked, dismissed, and underestimated, but that had only made her stronger. The trials were only beginning, and Lyra was ready to show that true skill was not always measured by rank, power, or weapon, but by focus, courage, and heart. And somewhere high above, the apex tilted its massive head, amber eyes fixed on her, as if it already knew that Lyra, the girl ranked 91st, was destined to do something no one could have imagined. The second trial began at dawn, and the arena had transformed overnight. The ground was uneven, filled with sharp rocks and pools of strange, glowing liquid that steamed in the cold morning air. Massive walls of crystal rose from the ground, reflecting the weak sunlight in dazzling patterns. A low hum vibrated through the arena, as if the world itself were alive and testing the competitors. Lyra stood at the edge of the starting point, her heart steady. She had survived the first challenge, but she knew this trial would demand more than clever thinking. It would demand courage and quick adaptation. The signal sounded and competitors surged forward. Some charged aggressively toward the pools and crystal walls, hoping to reach the center first. Others moved cautiously, but few managed to maintain focus as strange creatures emerged from the shadows. These creatures were unlike anything Lyra had seen. Their limbs were long and spindly, their skin a shifting pattern of colors that camouflaged them perfectly against the crystal walls. They attacked with lightning-fast strikes, biting and clawing at anything that moved. Many participants panicked, swinging weapons blindly, and a few were injured immediately. The crowd gasped and shouted, excitement rising as the chaos unfolded. Lyra took a deep breath and observed before acting. She noticed that the creatures attacked only when disturbed, moving in predictable bursts. Instead of charging forward, she moved quietly along the edges of the pools, stepping lightly on the rocks and avoiding sudden movements. When a creature lunged, she shifted her body and dodged, never attacking but always keeping herself safe. Her careful observation allowed her to understand patterns that others ignored. While the stronger competitors relied on brute force, she relied on patience, timing, and her ability to stay calm under pressure. One by one, she passed several dangerous areas. A larger predator, a six-legged beast with glowing eyes, appeared near a pool. Most participants tried to fight it with blinding energy weapons or oversized blades, but the creature was too fast. Lyra crouched low and watched. She realized it reacted only to vibrations in the ground. Slowly, she stepped on the rocks that were stable and avoided the ones that would alert the predator. The beast circled and lunged several times, but Lyra's careful movements allowed her to slip past it without injury. She felt a surge of quiet triumph. Her strategy worked, and she had done it without drawing attention. The crowd, initially focused on the top-ranked participants, started noticing her. Whispers traveled through the stands, "Look at that girl, she's moving so carefully but she's ahead of many top-ranked competitors. How can number 91 survive where number 5 almost fell?" The murmurs grew louder, and even some higher-ranked participants began to glance nervously at her. Lyra paid no attention. She knew that fear and showmanship were traps in this trial. Only focus, awareness, and patience could keep her alive. The apex watched silently from the cliffs above, its massive form blending with the shadows. Reiner's amber eyes followed Lyra's movements, tracking her every step. Unlike the others who yelled, attacked, or drew attention to themselves, Lyra moved like part of the arena itself, blending with the environment. Occasionally she glanced at smaller creatures caught in the chaos. Some were frightened, others injured. She helped a tiny injured lizard across a dangerous pool, gently nudging it onto a safe rock. The crowd noticed her kindness and gasped again. In a trial meant for survival, her empathy was unusual. Even the apex seemed to pause in its watchfulness, tilting its massive head as if approving her actions. The middle of the arena was a chaotic mess. Pools of glowing liquid hissed and steamed, and crystal walls shifted slightly as if responding to the competitors' presence. Some participants were trapped or injured, while others tried to force their way through only to fail. Lyra remained calm, finding safe paths and avoiding unnecessary conflict. She began to notice a pattern in the shifting crystal walls. Certain walls moved when creatures approached, opening pathways or blocking them. She adjusted her movements accordingly, using the openings to pass areas that others struggled to navigate. Her mind worked like a machine, calculating paths and anticipating danger while keeping herself and any nearby creatures safe. As she advanced, a competitor with rank 7 rushed past her recklessly, trying to push through a group of predators. One of the creatures bit him, throwing him into a pool of glowing liquid. Lyra paused, keeping her distance but did not look away. Instead of running or attacking, she used a fallen crystal shard to create a distraction, luring the predators away from other participants who were trapped. The apex's eyes remained fixed on her. For the first time in the trial, it seemed to shift slightly closer, its massive claws crunching against the cliff. The crowd erupted, whispering again, "The apex is moving closer. Is it because of her?" Finally, Lyra reached a plateau near the center of the arena. From here she could see the chaos below, injured competitors struggling, creatures moving unpredictably, and glowing pools that hissed like boiling water. Others might have felt panic, but she felt clarity. She understood the arena's rules now. Patience, observation, and empathy were more powerful than strength. The apex's presence above was no longer intimidating, it was almost like a silent companion, acknowledging her strategy and her courage. A sudden tremor shook the arena. A crystal wall collapsed nearby, sending debris down toward a group of competitors. Panic erupted and most participants ran blindly. Lyra stayed calm, spotting the falling debris in time to avoid it. She also noticed 2 small creatures trapped under the rubble. Without hesitation she ran a few steps, lifted a shard of crystal and freed them. The crowd gasped loudly at her bravery. Even some high-ranked competitors stopped and stared, their previous confidence shaken. Lyra's combination of caution, intelligence, and empathy was changing how everyone viewed her. The trial ended as the sun climbed high, casting long shadows across the arena. Lyra had passed almost every obstacle without serious injury. Many of the top-ranked competitors had struggled or failed, some barely making it through. The crowd erupted in cheers not just for the spectacle, but for the quiet human girl who had survived through wit and heart. The apex, massive and imposing, finally lowered itself slightly, its glowing amber eyes still fixed on her. There was no roar, no attack, only a silent acknowledgement as if it recognized her potential and her rare qualities. As she returned to the starting point, competitors glanced at her with newfound respect, and whispers spread through the crowd, "Number 91, she's not just lucky. She's clever, careful, and brave." Lyra did not smile. She had learned long ago that attention was temporary. What mattered was the next trial, the next challenge. She took a deep breath and prepared herself. The proving ground had tested strength, cunning, and courage, and she had passed not through force but through focus, observation, and empathy. Somewhere above, the apex shifted its massive form, following her silently. It seemed to know that this was only the beginning. Lyra, the girl ranked 91st, had proven something extraordinary, that survival was not only about power, but about understanding, patience, and heart. And with every step she took, the path forward in the trials became clearer, not just for her, but for anyone who believed that the smallest and quietest could achieve greatness. The third trial began just as the sun dipped low, casting long eerie shadows across the arena. The terrain had changed again. Giant spires of rock jutted from the ground like jagged teeth, and pools of shimmering, silver liquid reflected the fading light. Strange mist rolled across the floor, hiding dangerous creatures that prowled silently. The air was thick, and every breath Lyra took felt heavy with tension. She knew this trial was different. It was not only about survival, it was about facing the apex itself. As the competitors gathered, a low vibration ran through the ground. The crowd fell silent, sensing something monumental approaching. From the cliffs above, a massive shadow moved, and the temperature seemed to drop. The apex, Reiner, appeared. Its enormous wings spread wide, brushing the cliffs and sending small rocks tumbling down. Its scales shimmered in shifting shades of green and gold, and its eyes glowed amber, piercing the dim light. Every muscle in its colossal body seemed ready to strike, yet it moved with a calm, deliberate grace. Competitors froze, some crouching, others raising weapons in fear or defiance. Lyra's heart raced, but she felt no panic. She had studied Reiner's movements in the previous trials and understood its behavior better than most. While the others reacted with aggression or fear, she took a slow, deep breath and observed. She noticed the apex's gaze scanning the arena, moving from competitor to competitor, finally settling on her. That gaze was unlike anything she had felt before. It was sharp, intelligent, and searching. For a moment, it seemed as if Reiner could see into her mind, judging not only her actions but her thoughts. The signal sounded and competitors were released into the trial. Many rushed forward recklessly, hoping to impress the crowd or provoke the apex. Others moved cautiously, but almost everyone was tense, their fear slowing them down. Lyra stepped carefully, keeping her distance from dangerous terrain and observing the creatures that lurked in the mist. Small predators darted at the competitors, but she avoided them with careful, measured movements. She did not fight unnecessarily. Instead, she studied, predicted, and moved quietly, making herself almost invisible to both the predators and the apex's peripheral awareness. The apex descended gradually, its massive claws scraping against rocks and debris. When it landed, the ground shook, sending some competitors stumbling. Lyra froze for a moment, then continued, her gaze never leaving Reiner. She sensed that this was not a trial to defeat the apex by force. It was a test of respect and courage. Other participants swung weapons at it, yelled, and made sudden movements. Each time, Reiner's head would tilt, its eyes narrowing, but it did not attack. Lyra realized that her calm, careful approach had already set her apart. As she moved deeper into the arena, she encountered the cubs of the apex. Small, golden-scaled creatures, no larger than a human child, were huddled near a crystal spire. They whimpered and looked frightened. Competitors rushed to capture or attack them, thinking it would earn favor with the apex. Lyra stopped in her tracks. She did not raise a weapon or rush forward. Instead, she took a few slow steps, hands open and visible, showing she meant no harm. Her voice was soft as she spoke to the cubs, soothing and gentle. The apex's massive head lowered slightly, observing her every move. The crowd gasped. No human had ever approached the apex's cubs without immediate punishment. Lyra knelt carefully, moving only as far as the cubs felt safe. One of the young creatures stepped forward cautiously, sniffing her hand. She did not flinch. She let it explore, keeping her movements slow and predictable. The apex watched silently, its eyes never leaving her. For the first time, it seemed to acknowledge a human as different, not a threat, not prey, but something worthy of trust. Suddenly, a loud roar echoed across the arena as a group of high-ranked competitors tried to attack the apex directly. The creature reacted, spreading its wings and emitting a shockwave that knocked them back. Rocks tumbled and a few participants were injured. Lyra did not move. She had learned that the apex respected patience and respect more than aggression. Her careful approach had kept her safe, while others who relied on force were punished immediately. The spectators watched in awe. Whispers spread quickly, "Number 91, she's not attacking it, and it's letting her near the cubs." One of the cubs stepped closer to Lyra, nuzzling her hand. She smiled faintly, keeping her voice soft and gentle. "It's okay. I won't hurt you," she murmured. The apex's head tilted, amber eyes fixed on her. There was a long silence, broken only by the mist swirling around the arena. The crowd held its breath. It seemed impossible, but the apex, towering, powerful, feared, was allowing a human to approach its young. Some competitors tried to challenge her, rushing forward to prove themselves. Lyra stood slowly, her posture calm and confident. She did not raise a weapon. Instead, she shifted slightly to shield the cubs from harm, her eyes never leaving the apex. The creature's massive wings moved slightly, and it let out a low rumble that reverberated through the arena. It was a warning to others but also a signal of trust toward Lyra. The crowd erupted in murmurs of disbelief. Spectators had never seen such a thing. A low-ranked girl, quiet and unassuming, commanding the respect of the apex itself. As the trial progressed, Lyra moved carefully with the cubs, keeping them safe while avoiding predators and obstacles. She used her intelligence to navigate the shifting terrain, sometimes lifting the cubs gently to help them over rocks or pools of shimmering liquid. The apex followed at a distance, massive eyes watching, but it never interfered. It allowed her to guide the young creatures through the trial, silently judging her courage, patience, and respect. By the time the trial ended, Lyra was standing at the center of the arena, the cubs safe and unharmed beside her. Other competitors were injured, exhausted, or terrified. The crowd erupted in awe, cheering not for flashy attacks or brute strength, but for the girl who had earned the apex's trust. Reiner's massive head lowered one final time, amber eyes locking with hers. There was no roar, no attack, only acknowledgement. Lyra had done what no one else could. She had survived not by fighting, but by understanding, respecting, and connecting. The spectators could hardly believe their eyes. The girl ranked 91st had not only survived the trial, but she had achieved something extraordinary. She had earned the trust of the most feared creature in the galaxy. Her heart pounded, but she felt a quiet sense of pride. She had learned that courage was not always loud, and strength was not always physical. Sometimes, the smallest and quietest could achieve the greatest impact. As she walked back to the arena entrance, guiding the cubs carefully, competitors looked at her with new respect. The crowd continued to cheer, whispering stories of her bravery and intelligence. Above them all, the apex followed silently, wings folded but eyes glowing, as if it had already chosen her for something extraordinary. Lyra's journey was far from over, but in that moment she knew one thing clearly. Her quiet courage and heart had made her different, special, and unforgettable. The arena had fallen into an unusual quiet after the third trial. Competitors who had survived stared in disbelief at Lyra. She was small, unassuming, and ranked 91st, yet she had not only survived but had earned the trust of the apex. The massive creature, Reiner, stood nearby, wings folded, eyes glowing amber, watching her every move. Its cubs huddled close to her, chirping softly. The crowd was silent for a moment, shocked that such a feat had been accomplished. Lyra felt their eyes but did not let them distract her. She had a task to complete, and it required patience, calmness, and respect. The next phase of the trial required competitors to move the cubs to a safe area across the arena, a section filled with treacherous terrain, including glowing pools, shifting crystal walls, and lurking predators. Most participants rushed forward recklessly, trying to grab the cubs and earn favor with the apex. But the creature roared sharply whenever someone approached aggressively, and the cubs panicked. Lyra had learned from observing Reiner that force and fear were useless. Trust had to be earned slowly with care and empathy. She approached carefully, her hands open and gentle, speaking softly to the cubs. "It's okay," she whispered. "I won't hurt you. Come with me." One of the cubs stepped forward, cautiously nuzzling her hand. Lyra smiled faintly, feeling a warmth in her chest. The others followed, sensing the calm she radiated. She moved slowly, making sure each cub felt safe before taking another step. The apex followed at a distance, its massive body moving silently, yet its presence was felt with every step. Competitors watched in awe, realizing that Lyra's approach was unlike anything they had ever seen. Some tried to mimic her, but the cubs rejected them immediately, running back toward her. The connection she had established was unique. The terrain was difficult. Pools of shimmering liquid hissed and spat mist when touched. Sharp crystal spires rose from the ground, blocking paths and creating narrow passages. Predators lurked in the shadows, their glowing eyes scanning for prey. Lyra moved carefully, carrying one cub over a tricky patch of rocks, while another followed at her side. She whispered encouragement to them, her voice calm and steady. The apex's eyes never left her. It tilted its massive head, observing how she guided the young creatures without fear or harm. Every small action mattered. A wrong move could break the trust she had earned. At one point, a predator emerged from the mist, its claws extended, moving toward the cubs. Competitors screamed and attacked it, but Lyra acted differently. She stayed calm and noticed a safe route behind a cluster of crystals. She guided the cubs swiftly through the narrow passage, avoiding both the predator and any danger from the crystals themselves. The apex lowered its head slightly, amber eyes glowing, and the predator retreated at the creature's silent signal. The audience erupted in astonishment. Lyra had not fought the predator. She had protected the cubs through observation, intelligence, and trust. As they moved further, a sudden tremor shook the arena. Part of a crystal spire collapsed, threatening to trap one of the cubs. Lyra acted quickly. She lifted the fragment carefully, clearing the path just as the young creature scuttled past. Her hands shook slightly but she remained composed, speaking softly to the cub. "It's okay, you're safe now." The apex growled low, a sound that resonated through the arena, and then stepped aside, giving her space. The spectators were on their feet, cheering loudly, many with tears in their eyes. Lyra's courage and calmness were extraordinary, proving that strength was not only measured by power or rank. Other competitors attempted to challenge her, trying to grab the cubs or rush past her, but the apex made clear that they were not welcome. It spread its wings slightly, sending a shockwave that knocked some off balance. Lyra did not flinch. She moved slowly, deliberately, letting the cubs feel her calm energy. The bond she had formed with them was deeper than fear, control, or authority. It was trust, pure and simple. Even the crowd could feel it, the quiet power of connection and understanding that no weapon or strength could replicate. As they reached the final stretch of the trial, the terrain became more treacherous. Pools of silver liquid hissed and bubbled, and crystal walls shifted unpredictably. Lyra lifted one of the cubs over a low wall while guiding another around a dangerous patch of rocks. Every movement was deliberate, careful, and precise. The apex followed, moving slowly to avoid harming them, yet every step it took radiated power and vigilance. Lyra realized that the creature was testing her still, seeing if her care for the cubs was genuine or temporary. She did not falter. Her hands were gentle, her voice steady, and her eyes focused on the path ahead. Finally, they reached a safe area, a high plateau away from predators and dangerous terrain. Lyra placed the cubs down, watching as they explored cautiously but happily. She knelt beside them, letting them nuzzle her hands and arms. The apex lowered its massive head to her level, amber eyes locking with hers. There was no aggression, no threat, only recognition and respect. Lyra reached out, and for the first time, the apex allowed her to touch its snout gently. The audience erupted into cheers, the sound echoing across the cliffs and arena. Even the high-ranked competitors watched in awe, unable to comprehend what they had just witnessed. Lyra stood slowly, brushing dust from her clothes. She looked at the apex and its cubs, feeling a mixture of pride, relief, and quiet joy. She had formed a bond, not through fear, not through strength, but through respect, patience, and empathy. The crowd's excitement was overwhelming, but she did not let it distract her. She knew that the bond she had formed with Reiner and its cubs was unique, something no rank, skill, or weapon could replicate. It was trust earned through heart and action. As she returned to the starting point, competitors and spectators alike whispered her name. Number 91. She's incredible. She actually gained the apex's trust. No one else could have done that. Lyra's quiet bravery had transformed the arena. She had proven that empathy and intelligence could surpass strength and rank. The apex followed silently, massive wings folded, amber eyes fixed on her. It seemed to convey a message without words. Trust, respect, and courage mattered more than anything else. For the first time, Lyra understood something profound. Survival was not only about defeating obstacles or opponents, it was about connection, understanding, and protecting those who could not protect themselves. She had gained the trust of the most powerful creature in the arena. She had shown that even the smallest, least-ranked competitor could accomplish the extraordinary. And with that bond established, the final trial awaited, promising challenges that would test not only her skill but the strength of the trust she had earned. Somewhere above, Reiner's massive form shifted slightly, as if acknowledging that the journey ahead would require more than courage, it would require heart. Lyra, holding her head high, walked forward calmly, ready to face whatever the trials could throw at her, knowing that the bond she had formed was her greatest strength. The final trial began under a sky streaked with gold and crimson. The arena had transformed once again, this time into a vast, uneven valley filled with jagged cliffs, deep chasms, and rivers of molten rock. The air was hot, and a faint smell of sulfur lingered. Competitors gathered at the starting point, some injured, some exhausted, but all tense with anticipation. Lyra stood calmly among them, her focus unwavering. She had survived every trial so far, not through brute force but through patience, intelligence, and empathy. Now the ultimate test awaited, the culmination of all she had learned. The signal sounded, and competitors scattered across the valley. Some rushed forward, hoping to dominate with strength and speed. Others moved cautiously, trying to avoid danger. But almost immediately the apex, Reiner, appeared. Its massive wings created gusts of wind that knocked competitors off balance. Its amber eyes glowed as it circled the arena, observing every move. Lyra's heart pounded, but she felt no fear. She had learned that aggression was not the path to survival. Instead, she would rely on the trust she had built, the careful strategy she had used, and the bond she had formed with the cubs. The first challenge was to cross a river of molten rock, flowing rapidly between jagged cliffs. Most competitors panicked, trying to jump across or force a path through, but many fell into the molten streams or were scorched by splashing lava. Lyra studied the terrain and noticed a narrow, stable path along the edges, partially hidden by rock formations. She guided the cubs carefully, stepping lightly and speaking softly to keep them calm. The apex followed at a distance, its massive body moving with careful precision so as not to disturb the delicate balance. The crowd watched in amazement as Lyra moved steadily while stronger, higher-ranked participants struggled dangerously. Next, a pack of predators emerged from the shadows, long, serpentine creatures with glowing eyes and razor-sharp teeth. Competitors attacked recklessly, trying to fend them off, but many were injured or driven back. Lyra stayed calm. She observed the predators' movements and noticed their tendency to avoid shadows where the molten rock reflected light. Using this knowledge, she guided the cubs along safe patches, moving quickly but without panic. The apex's gaze remained on her, and it let out a low, approving rumble as she successfully avoided danger. Spectators were on their feet, cheering for her intelligence and courage rather than any display of brute strength. As she moved forward, the terrain became more complex. Giant crystals jutted from the ground, creating narrow corridors. Some competitors tried to push through aggressively, but the crystals shifted unexpectedly, trapping or injuring them. Lyra carefully examined each passage, testing its stability before moving. When she reached a narrow corridor with one cub hesitant to follow, she knelt and extended her hand gently. "Come on," she whispered. "You're safe with me." Slowly the cub moved forward, following her lead. The crowd gasped again, seeing how much trust the creature placed in her. The apex shifted slightly, lowering its head in acknowledgement. Suddenly a tremor shook the valley. Rocks tumbled down, blocking part of the path and separating some competitors. Lyra acted quickly, lifting a fallen shard of crystal to clear the way and guiding the cubs through. Her movements were precise and deliberate, never hurried. One of the cubs slipped slightly, but she caught it before it fell. The apex rumbled, a deep sound that resonated through the valley. It stepped forward, massive claws crunching against the rocks, then stopped, letting her continue. The crowd erupted in cheers. No one had ever seen a human move with such calm authority, guiding creatures that even the most powerful competitors could not control. As they reached the final challenge, a vast chasm blocked their path. A narrow bridge of rock spanned the distance, suspended over a glowing river of molten rock. The wind howled and the bridge trembled slightly with each step. Lyra assessed the situation carefully. She picked up one of the cubs gently, holding it close, while guiding the others with her free hand. Step by step, she moved across the bridge, her movements steady, precise, and calm. The apex followed, maintaining distance but clearly observing her every action. Some competitors tried to follow, but panic and haste caused them to stumble or slip. Lyra did not falter. She focused on each step, each movement, and each cub, ensuring that all reached the other side safely. The crowd was silent in awe, then erupted into cheering and applause as she reached the far end with the cubs unharmed. The apex descended beside her, massive body folding gracefully, amber eyes glowing with respect and acknowledgement. Lyra knelt and placed her hand gently on the creature's snout. For the first time she felt a warm, powerful connection, a bond not of fear but of mutual respect and understanding. The crowd went wild. Spectators clapped, cheered, and shouted in amazement. Lyra, ranked 91st, had not only survived all the trials but had earned the trust of the apex, something no other competitor had achieved. The high-ranked participants looked on in awe, some in disbelief, as the girl they had dismissed now stood as a symbol of courage, intelligence, and heart. The cubs chirped happily, nuzzling her gently, while Reiner lowered its massive head close to her, allowing her to touch it freely. As the final signal sounded, marking the end of the trials, the judges declared her a true legend. Not for fighting, not for weapons or flashy skills, but for the qualities that mattered most: patience, empathy, intelligence, and bravery. Lyra stood slowly, brushing dust from her clothes, smiling faintly as the crowd continued to cheer. She had proven that even someone underestimated, ranked 91st, could astonish the galaxy through heart and courage. Reiner's eyes followed her as she walked toward the exit, the cubs at her side. The apex gave a low rumble, almost like a sound of approval, then turned to return to the cliffs. The connection she had formed would last far beyond the trials. Lyra looked back at the arena one last time, knowing that her story had changed how everyone would view strength and bravery. Word of her achievement spread quickly across the galaxy. Humans, often underestimated in strength and skill, now had proof that courage, intelligence, and empathy could surpass raw power. Lyra became a living legend, an example for all who believed they were too small, too weak, or too overlooked. Her name would be remembered not because she was ranked high, but because she had shown that the heart and mind could achieve the impossible. Lyra returned home quietly, the cubs safe and the apex's trust earned. She carried not just their safety, but a lesson that would echo across the galaxy. True greatness is measured not by numbers, weapons, or ranks, but by courage, understanding, and the ability to protect those who cannot protect themselves. And somewhere above the cliffs, Reiner watched, amber eyes glowing, knowing that this quiet, brave human had become more than a competitor. She had become a legend.